Thank you so
So
much.
We weren't allowed to have soft
We're
drinks.
the
We never
same
drank soft drinks growing up.
I wasn't allowed either. My grandfather always had macaroni and oxy, so like.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and get going. I'll call the meeting to order. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you very much. I'm going to open public comment at 6:03. Mr. Parsons, do we have any people online?
No public comment.
Thank you. We have no public in attendance other than Mr. Mega, who's always here to film us. Mr. Mega, do you have any public comment at this time?
Not today.
Okay,
What
great.
about this?
All right. So, yeah, due to the weather tonight, the varsity coach and the athletic director talked with Mrs. Moriarty and decided we're gonna kick the can down the road so people don't have to travel tonight due to the road conditions. So we'll take that up in January. Caleb, are you up for a student update?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to
So-
turn your
Yeah.
Tonight's beach shot.
What was the question?
Are you able to turn your camera on, Caleb, or would you prefer to keep it off for privacy?
I can turn it on. It's fine. So recently winter sports have started up and practices have begun. The first games are going to begin later this week. Also this week on Thursday night at 7 is the winter concert at the auditorium. Admission is free and there's no tickets required. Interact and Robotics are going to go caroling at the Veterans Home in Tilton this weekend on Sunday. We hope to like spread the holiday spirit over there and kind of share what we have with them. Also, Student Council is sponsoring a school-wide clue game for the holidays, and the winners will receive gift cards for solving all of the clues. That's what
Excellent.
we
Is
got.
that it?
Yes.
All right.
Thanks, Caleb.
And I might add that Caleb, you'll be performing at the concert coming up, correct?
I will.
Nice.
Don't sound too.
Next up, we have the minutes from the November 12th meeting.
Motion to approve.
Move to approve. Is there a second? Second by Jim. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
I abstain because I was not present.
Ms. Starmer abstains. We also have the minutes from the November 18th non-public school board meeting.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? Okay, very good. Ms. Dolph, current bills payable.
In your packet, there's manifest 3012,
What's the page?
page 16.
Thank you.
It starts, well, yes,
Got it.
page 17. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from Mrs. Dolph? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve it.
So moved.
So moved by Nancy, second.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Connolly. Any other discussion on the manifest? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Manifest is approved. Next up, we have the enrollment report. Mrs. Moriarty,
A slight decline of 3 students,
slight decline.
What's the number?
3,
What's the
919
919? Thank you.
from 922.
Great, thank you, Mary.
Mary, were those people moving or the families hired for job opportunities or something?
I don't have the reasons behind those changes.
Very good. Next up, staffing update.
So some improvements since last month. We have hired a couple of paraeducators, and we were successful in hiring somebody to join our technology team. So that is an improvement from where we were. If you notice, we still, for non-bargaining, we are still down 4. That is in the area of custodial. And one of the things that we are starting to try to pilot is using a contracted service to help with some night cleaning. So this will give us a chance to see how that works out. That might become a way that we balance that staffing shortage.
Great.
And I do want to thank folks for working very hard to continue to try to hire folks.
Excellent. Any other questions regarding staffing? Hearing none, I am moving on to the year-to-date financial report. Ms. Dolph.
In your packet on page 23 is a year-to-date financial report.
23?
Yes, page 23. We have a change in position, about $300,000. Their last month's report was about $2.5 million available, and now we're roughly at $2.2 million available. Happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Questions for Ms. Dolph? All right, thank you very much, Ashley.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the Federal Accountability and New Hampshire Department of Education report card, which will be Ms. Papalardo, Mr. Boucher, Dr. Downing, and Mr. Hilger, along with prompting from our superintendent.
I think I'm going to take the lead this evening as we have a number of people remote due to incoming weather. So first, I'd like to acknowledge that all of our schools, and even though we have 3 schools, the state council says 4 because Interlakes Middle School is its own school and Interlakes High School is considered its own school by the state. All of our schools are in good standing from a federal accountability, and that's an accomplishment and one that I want to thank our students and our staff and our administration for ensuring that we are making good strides in continuously improving as we continue to strive for excellence. I do want to first acknowledge one piece. In your packet, there was a question last meeting regarding number of students who had graduated. So if you look on page 24, just some highlights. So we had 65 seniors graduate last year with a diploma, plus 2 early graduates. So that was a total of 67 diplomas. Last year, we had 13 cum laude, 9 magna cum laude, and 3 summa cum laude awards presented. In addition to those 67, 4 students earned a diploma through adult education, which is one of the pathways that we support, working with students. It's important, one size does not fit all. And so having that as an option between Carroll County Adult Education and Laconia Adult Education, we're fortunate to be able to support students in completing that attaining of diploma. We had 1 HiSET completer. 2 students received a certificate of attendance. They were foreign exchange students. 2 students were returning for a 5th year, and we did have 2 students who dropped out. That is never, we work very hard to try to provide a lot of opportunities, and certainly if somebody finds themselves in a different place and wants to come back and have a conversation about how to get there, we encourage that and welcome that. If Mr. Parsons, I think, was going to pull up just the district report card. So this kind of will do an abridged version this evening. So if you go to our website and go to schools, there will, when you pull that up that tab, it will say district and school report cards. If you click on that, you get an opportunity to enter any school in the state of New Hampshire to get their report card. And there's a number of indicators here. So student achievement is related to the New Hampshire SAS. There is a coding, top 25%, middle 50, and lower 25%. So relative to where we are right now with student achievement, we are in the middle 50%. If you drill down into our schools, we have some celebrations relative to being in the top 25% in certain areas. You will also notice there's a number of different indicators. These all feed into federal accountability. School environment is one to kind of turn your attention to. It's off to the right in the upper corner. You see incidents of violence. Unfortunately, we did try to work with the state to have that category either changed or to have things that make up that category excluded. For instance, vaping, cigarette smoking, use of THC is considered by their definition to fall into a violent category. We had about, I think it was 27 incidents at the high school level falling and middle school level falling into that category. So that starts to drive that number, I think in a way that doesn't necessarily represent what actually occurred. The word violence, I think, sends an impression that is, I would consider it a mislabel of what makes up that category. Now, the reality is looking at, being in the top 25% out of school suspension rate and in-school suspension rate. The reality is if the school had, vaping is something that's happening, I would say, probably in every school throughout our state at a high school level, and probably to some degree at the middle school level. Not all schools issue a suspension for that. They may just have a program that is a restorative program. We try to operate with both. We have a consequence, and we also have restorative practices, such as working with our outreach counselor, who is a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. So there's an educational component, and then also often a consequence. That is certainly something that the middle high is drilling in a little deeper to, trying to analyze that, because that is certainly different than what we are seeing other schools reporting, and something that, we want to, be mindful of and make sure that we are thoughtful about those decisions. So that is an area that we're looking at. Also, part of that number, at least 13 of those incidents are for children grade 2 or under who had serious dysregulation. Again, not every school may assign a suspension for that, and that is certainly something I think as we have stabilized administration at ILES, I think we're able to look at some different supports for that building. These numbers are based on last year, so that's important to keep in mind. Mr. Parsons, would you mind going to, how about like let's do Interlakes High School for a moment.
Sure, just give me 1 second. I'm just going to stop sharing and pulling it up on the other screen because it takes a little bit of time here.
Mary, while we're waiting,
Okay.
do I understand correctly? I'm not saying that I'm not suggesting anything. I just want to make sure that I understand correctly. So violence numbers are imposed by the state's definition. Therefore, it's a violent activity.
You gave a suspension for vaping, and vaping, we consider vaping violence, and you only have to report it it only gets reported if it had a suspension attached to it.
So because of, and again, not trying to, because Interlakes imposes a suspension.
Yeah.
So those numbers
Yeah.
are sort of self-inflicted if you
Correct.
have that?
Again, I don't want to speak to other schools, but what I would say, if you said to me, get those numbers down, right? One might say the way to do that is not to assign a suspension for vaping. However, it is a rule, and I think, and that's where I think our high school has a healthy balance of trying to have some modern level supports, but also maybe having some more traditional consequences. But that is certainly, I think, one of those areas we're drilling into, because it doesn't give, I think, a fair perception of what that word might actually, garner from somebody.
And I'm not, again, I don't want to suggest that.
I hear you. Yeah.
I feel
So-
like what's not fair about it is this comparative nature between the schools, like even assigning top 25% or lower 20 or whatever it is. Like if they were just numbers,
Yeah.
that
Well, and again, the kids, we operate with kids in front of us, and their needs, right, change depending on who they are. And so that is difficult because it doesn't necessarily mean that a place is either having a success or a challenge. It might just be addressing what's before you. So for Interlakes High School, you see the 29. So 27 were related to vaping, vaping with THC and cigarettes. One incident of cigarettes, people. But here's, I think a celebration for us. English language arts proficiency, 69%. Top 25% of the state. So, that's a nice place where we might want to use the 25%. That is a nice recognition of some very hard work. I don't know if you want us to look at each school or do that in January. I'm sensitive to your time this evening. We can pick some highlights. Sandwich Central School and ILES have some highlights as well, if you'd like to. Or we can do that.
What would the
People could
board-
have some time to explore and then ask questions in
I'd
January.
like to look at this.
I spent some time on the site and it is pretty interesting. I would encourage everybody to delve into it. Maybe then we'd have an in-person with the principals if we had specific questions.
Perfect.
I would agree.
Are we able to see the finer aggregates in this data? Like, are you able to see those categories?
No.
That's so
So we have to then drill. Where that comes from is annually, we have to do a report to the state. It's the principals are responsible for doing it by June 30th. And then I'm responsible for signing off on it. And that is where all this, the school environment data comes from. And so we drill into that to make that report, and then they put it out. So
Mary,
The total.
I don't mean to be skeptical, but like the classification of vaping as a violent, how good is this data? What's it really telling
Well-
us? Is it useful?
I think we are fortunate that we are small, and so we really are in tune with
The reality?
the reality. I think I want to commend our administrators. We work really hard with,
So Amanda's happy.
oh, sorry, I'm like, who's Chris Downing?
It's Amanda's husband.
I apologize. As you can see, you're looking at the very flattering part of my under chin because I'm on my husband's computer that has a camera that points up instead of out. So I apologize for that. My computer is malfunctioning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. What I was just going to say, and I think you can expand on, is we are fortunate, we are small, we have incredible staff, and we do follow each kid and each need. So, the kids who are vaping and or using THC, we have plans in place to work with them to resolve those. But Amanda, why don't you speak to what you were going to say?
No, just very briefly that, in response to what you said, Charlie, whether or not the numbers are, something that I already cannot figure out what word you just used to describe that, but is it relevant? Is it whatever it may be? There are also multiple kids that have multiple offenses that are lumped into that number. The algorithm that they use for each of the categories within the report in and of itself is something that myself and Mrs. Pappalardo have brought to the Department of Education to ask in regard to this. This doesn't really paint a picture. I also think there's been a shift in the practices surrounding vaping and using drugs. As you know, I can't articulate what year it shifted from tobacco being an illicit drug, from it just being a violation in our schools. Whenever it turned from 18 to 21, I want to say that's a 6 or 7 year old mandate, but I don't remember. So that in and of itself shifted it into a different category, because prior to, only illicit drugs and alcohol would have been counted in that category. Now it's all tobacco. And as you can imagine, that in and of itself does not describe a violent incident, but that is the part of the report that it chunks and then it makes a percentage out of. And I think some practices are shifting in other districts in regard to how they handle vaping, and moving away from suspension and moving more toward educational pieces. I think that we do both. And I think that we do both well, but I do think that speaks to that number.
No, thank you, Amanda. I don't mean to get caught up on just this vaping thing. That wasn't my point. It was broader of this tool overall. If they're already kind of screwing this up in my mind, why should I feel good about the data on educator profiles or student achievement? I mean, is that data good?
The student achievement data is, that matches with the data that we have.
It's a
I think
standardized test, right?
Yes, right. The reality is, it's what we do with the data and how we continuously try to make improvement, I think is the key.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think Amanda spoke very well about it, but you think about what we were talking about earlier, perception is powerful. People look at that, what Charlie's questions are. If you take that with no context, you're gonna see the same thing. If you looked at our enrollment report, someone might say, oh, our homeschooling is going up. Why? Well, look, because we have a bunch of violent vapors at our school, right? So I think
They wouldn't even say vapors. They just say
Yeah,
violent
I think
kids,
we
right?
do need to probably pay attention to that whole thing like I was talking about before.
And, also to reiterate publicly that I did request of the commissioner that they reconsider either the naming of the category or taking things out. And he was certainly receptive. If it was possible, he pushed it to his team and the decision was made not to make any changes.
But we can still look at that internally, how we handle that as a group
Correct.
moving forward.
Can I ask you a question? This is
Yeah, go ahead.
I cannot read that, I'm sorry, I can't see it.
I can
But
barely read it too.
If we had, what is the percentage based on incidents per population? In other words, if a school is 5 times bigger than us and they have 5 times the incidents, they get the same percentage. Is that correct?
There's no percentage, it's a raw number.
It's a number.
It's a
That's
number.
It's a
the
number,
number
yeah.
of cases.
Okay.
So I guess you could argue.
And it's
there's a-
incidents. Like if there were 5 kids involved in a fight, that counts as an incident.
But
It
the
doesn't
color
count
coding of that 29 is placing it, and that's what you're saying, that the algorithm is somewhat opaque.
Correct. And if you click on, there's an opportunity to click on definitions. If Mr. Parsons scrolls down to the bottom. Glossary of terms, Mr. Parsons, it's in the middle under additional resources. If you go down to, I think it's V. I don't think it's I. Incidents of violence, if you click on it, it's empty as a definition.
Gee,
So
You could never be wrong.
at least they ought to put in there what's included.
I will push
in
back
case-
on that as well, but,
And just to reiterate, Mary, I apologize to interrupt. If we had, say that we had 4 students, and this doesn't count to what we have because we have not had fights, but if we had 4 students involved in a violent incident and each of those students received a suspension for a violent incident, that would count against us for each of those students that were involved in that incident, if that helps. So,
I think my interpretation is different and I will confirm that.
okay,
I
great.
thought it was the same incident, you count it once.
Duncan?
I think what you've just said illustrates the point that
Right.
you've made all evening,
Yeah.
that this is highly, highly subject to interpretation and definition and analysis, and that a little blue blob that says it's a good thing or a bad
So what
thing
we will do
isn't-
for,
needs to be taken with a grain of salt.
maybe for January though, we will maybe aggregate and or try to work on this a little bit more to give you a little more understanding of how many students it really represents.
Great.
Okay?
Do we publish this at all, like on
So
our
we-
own?
We are required because we take federal funds to have this linked on our website, which we do have.
But that's just
So-
leading back to this, like,
Yes.
are we able to provide just
We
on?
can certainly do another report, or, I mean, we could attach something to it, an analysis. We do in our annual report, we have done our growth and proficiency rating, the report that the board saw last month. We have not gone into the school environment and all of those pieces.
Yes, I'm just wondering, I'm thinking this is obviously an effort of transparency on a state level and publishing this, for any and all to see, but, if we're looking at this and understanding what these numbers really mean, if you don't have access to what those numbers really mean, it can be highly, like, if we were to to
Yeah.
hand those, like
Yeah.
27, then a parent could access that from our website and see like, oh, it's 27 vaping incidents, right? Like,
I feel like
that's
it
what
almost
makes it more meaningful.
goes back to what Nancy was saying, where you have that kind of like, even if it's like once a year, once a quarter, whatever, that like open, where we just like sit, it's like a school board meeting, it's like an open house. where
We
you
can
kind of
certainly
be like,
invite
hey.
parents in, come look at our report
And if
card
no one
and
shows
let's have
up,
a
then no one knows.
conversation.
Right.
Yeah, it's a starting point for a conversation.
If they're not making it meaningful, let's us make it meaningful.
We can certainly work to do that.
So,
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, Mary. Thank you, Silent Peanut Gallery. And thank you, Amanda, for actually articulating a thought. New business, school board goals, 25-26 budget development.
So just seeking from the board if there's any, as we work to develop the budget for 25-26, the last few years, I think there's been, I'm trying to look for opportunities to reduce the budget. Is that still a direction overall that the board would like us to take in? Or is there any different counsel that you would like to provide us as we prepare a budget to bring to you in January?
I would say, I'll start it off by saying that we have declining enrollment, we have costs going up, we need to find every little piece we can without being draconian to reduce the budget. And I think a logical place to look is when we have teachers retire, can we do something different with that position with the existing staff that are left? And I mean that in the most constructive sense.
Speaking for Meredith, they probably scream it louder than in the other two towns. Declining enrollment, rising cost. But they understand, and we tell them when we talk to them that, when your health insurance goes up 16.3%, and it's the fourth largest line in your budget, that's part. So you can have that conversation, but it's expensive to live up here. And so I think we need to bear that in as we work on the budget. You know me in numbers.
Other thoughts from Mary?
No, I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's, and we know what the contracts, this year is not a negotiation year, so we know what the contracts are. That's a fixed, so everything else should be open for conversation, I think.
Health insurance is a major driver of the budget.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
If you just take the family plans, the number of people we have enrolled in family plans, I think that alone added up to over $2 million.
Yeah.
Something like that,
Yeah.
2.3.
And
Well,
how
you said
much
something
is
that
it?
it's a family plan close to $40,000.
That's
It's over 40,
amazing.
it's 42.
It's closing and getting closer to 50, which is
That is
astonishing.
just amazing to me.
Right, so this is our reality.
We know a lot about it.
And we already know that next year's gonna have another big jump.
Right. So is that clear, Mary?
That seems to be the
Consensus
direction
of
the board wants.
It is the direction
Yeah.
that I'm
Okay.
going as well.
And we will walk hand in hand with you all as we get through this budget. Because there are gonna be some hard choices to make. That's the nature of the beast.
I want to share, actually, I think this was your father-in-law who said this,
Oh.
but I'm not positive, but he was on the board of, and anyway, an architect who said, it's so much easier if somebody gives you boundaries to be creative. Because if you say, design a building and you don't know anything about the environment, the costs, anything else, it's really hard to be creative. If you have boundaries around it and you say this building goes between these two skyscrapers and it's in an urban area and, that's helpful. I think this is an opportunity to be creative. Reducing a budget is important to do, but it's also an opportunity to think creatively about this, so.
Great, thank you, Mary. Hire part-time student services coordinator for Air Lakes Middle High School.
So although we were just talking about reducing the budget, the reality is, the special education demands continue, and having the opportunity to extract the Director of Student Services from more day-to-day operating pieces, I think will allow us to shape more of the system of special education and student services, which includes 504. So I am requesting that the board consider hiring a part-time student services coordinator, which is what we'd like to try to see if part-time might make the difference, 25 hours a week for the remainder of the school year, and then certainly look to bring that forward for discussion in next year's budget. But it really, we need the 30,000 foot view. And when you have to be more at the building level, it's hard to do that. And demands are not getting less in that area, they are increasing. And more intense needs required more intense attention of the director.
Where's the funding coming from for this?
So we have some savings in our summer learning.
Okay,
We
I do
didn't expend
remember
all of
reading
those
that, thank
funds,
you, yeah.
and we also have some staffing, like people were hired lower than, we had budgeted. So we have the funds for the remainder of this year. And then that certainly for next year would be a conversation during the budget cycle.
Duncan?
I would move to authorize the superintendent to hire as presented.
There's a seconded by Nancy. Any more discussion on this? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Ed.
Question, discussion point. Have we done a not work study program, like a manpower analysis, work hour analysis to support, like, is part-time enough? Do you need these 25 hours a week enough?
I
Are you
think,
gonna need 36? I don't.
I think this is a chance for us to try that. The reality when you work directly with people, right? Time, that is a hard thing to judge time-wise sometimes. I think, if we can get an experienced person for the 25 hours, I think that has potential of providing enough relief. And if it doesn't, then we will have some time before we start the budget, before we present it to maybe possibly increase it.
Will you be able to find somebody?
We are hopeful that we'll be able to find a part-time person.
So this is for the remainder of 2024 or for like
24, 25.
24, 25,
School
so
year,
for the
yeah,
remainder of this
school
school
year,
year, yeah. But I think we'll have at least enough sense, mid-January, we will have if we could get this hired before the break and that person can start, it'll be short time, but I think if we can hire, as I said, somebody with experience, I think that those 25 hours can go pretty far.
I may regret this for what the heck. It seems to me, and it's probably to a large degree COVID related and some of the exhaust coming out of that. But if we were to go back 10 years and look at the number of educators on our payroll and the number of administrators on our payroll, that is nowhere near the ratio it is at today. Probably less teachers and twice as many administrators. And that may change in the future as we work through the after effects of COVID. But when I watch these things grow disproportionately, that's the point.
You're counting special ed administrators in there.
Yeah.
The reality, what I will say is I recently saw an email from the Commissioner of Public Education about the funds that you get if you hit the threshold of about $73,000. The reality is the number of requests of kids in the state that are hitting that threshold has gone up substantially. The pool of money has not. But I think the reality is we have some, as I don't think it's unique to us as a state. I think it's, a national. We have some young children with really intense needs, and that does take a level of management. It's always hard. I think we try very hard to run as streamlined of an operation as we can, but There are times that there are parts of the work we do that are very time intensive. And investing in some leadership to support that, I think can pay some dividends in terms of preventing issues as well as supporting the people who are on the front line of the classroom.
Duncan, go ahead.
I take your point, Mark, and I think it's an important one as we move forward strategically. I think in special education, that point may be less clear. And the role of administrator and educator, I think is harder to differentiate. And that these special ed administrators are navigating a process that is educational and social, and that this is a complicated, it's not as simple as saying we've got a lot of, SAU employees and not as many French teachers. I think in special ed, it's a much more.
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
but it is still, I think, and sometimes even the enrollment numbers, our schools are too small for 800 or 900. We had a time when it was 13 to 1400. My buildings didn't shrink. What changed?
The way kids need to be educated.
That's the
And
point.
and the kids who are in front of us now are.
That's the point.
Did we vote back yet?
No,
We
we
have
have a motion on the floor.
Motion and a second?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? Questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next up, we have the Lighted Up Lakers campaign donations, which were made by, well, there are no English teachers in here right now. Melissa Cribble of Meredith Landing Real Estate in the amount of $230.10. The Hackett family in the amount of $5,000. Joe Boxer Plumbing and Heating in the amount of $3,000. Kathleen McCabe in the amount of $500. Patrick's Pub and Brewery in the amount of $250.44. So their grand total of donations and pledges to date is $112,944.74. I would entertain a motion to accept these with gratitude.
So moved.
Seconded. Moved by Ed, seconded by Jim. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, folks. Next up, the Lighted Up Lakers banner program, a little update on that.
So, my apologies, that's me, I was writing the minutes down. So the Lighted Up Lakers banner program, you have the information in your packet, so we rolled that out. We have our very first banner, Joe Boxer Plumbing and Heating, bought a $2,000 banner, so their contributions this evening amounts to $5,000. So very, very grateful to Joe Boxer Plumbing, and people, the information is on our website. We have a tab that's lighted, the lights campaign, so people can go there. If you want to provide a banner, all the information is there, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the superintendent? Thank you, Mary. Next up, policy review committee meeting minutes. Any questions about those? Next up then, we have policy updates required by legislative actions, which included, do we need to accept the minutes at this meeting? Mary?
No, you typically haven't. You just
Yeah.
acknowledged that they're.
We have DAF 3 procurement, DAF 5 conflict of interest and mandatory disclosures, DAF 9 time effort reporting oversight, DAF 12 reporting on real property, DAF 13 whistleblower protections, notification rights and remedies, EBCH, which is a new policy, chemical safety and chemical hygiene plan, GBGGA/JLCEA/KFD, not KFC, but KFD, use of automatic external defibrillators, IGE, objections to course materials. IHAM, health education exemption from instruction. JLCJA, emergency plan for sports-related injuries and additional protocol for athletics participation. JLF, reporting of suspected child abuse or neglect. JLP, parent notification of and involvement in student welfare. And again, these were, the only changes that were made were legislated. So changes in the law to be updated. I would take them as a group, or if somebody would like to pull out a particular policy, please let me know. If not, somebody could make a motion to approve all the.
Isn't that how it's written, Charlie? Motion to adopt the following policies as presented?
Right, but I'd like to give people the opportunity, should they want to pull a particular policy, we can do that.
Got it.
So if somebody would like to make a motion on all of them.
I just have, this isn't, I don't want to discuss this. I'm just wondering when the law changed about mandatory, everybody needing to be a mandatory reporter, not just an administrator or.
That predates this update.
I know, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been
A long time.
It's been at least 5 years, I think. I can certainly pull that.
No,
get that.
it came as a surprise to me. We had a presentation by the health, I forget her
I think it
title,
was
the health
Elise. Is it
officer
no
in
intent?
Sandwich, who explained that, and I thought, it used to be an administrator or policeman, you'd go to them and you would say, I have this suspicion, but now a neighbor can, anyway, I just wondered when that changed, because there were a number of us in this admittedly aged group of people at this presentation that were surprised.
I started at CAP in 2015, and I believe that was already in place at that time.
So Nancy, is that also a motion to approve these?
Yes, that's a motion as a whole package.
Second.
Seconded by Mark. Any other discussion or questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we have a rescission. Is that the right word? Rescission?
Decision? Extension.
Rescission. That's right.
Yeah, rescind.
It was
Rescission
rescission.
is the correct, yeah.
Professional personnel teacher, we'd like to rescind this because it is
GC.
now being, is moved to the hiring procedures manual.
I would move to rescind the policy as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Mark. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Next up, correspondence. Does anybody have any correspondence? Did anybody send us any letters, Mary? No. Excellent. Mr. Parsons, do we have any public in the netherworld? Or ether world, whatever you call it.
Meta.
He's
Yeah.
There he is, don't you think?
I'm just refreshing the screen. It doesn't appear that we got any. And my public comment is, according to ChatGPT, New Hampshire's mandatory reporting law has been in effect since 1979, but I'm not sure that that captures everybody that Ms. Starmer was referring to.
Yeah.
But there was
But I will
a
tell- yeah.
change in terms of training and all kinds of things. So.
Yeah, we started to do the no and tell.
Yeah, we did that a couple of years ago. and
It's RSA 169C 29, persons required to report.
Mhm.
And it's been in since 1979. But it is different in other states.
Mr. Parsons, we appreciate you helping us
Yes, thank you.
come up with information so quickly. It's very helpful.
ChatGPT, we appreciate you.
All right, Mr. Mega, any closing comments from you?
Good, thank you.
Very good. Then I am closing public comment at 6:46. Announcements. We have,
Don't read the first one, it's already here.
right, thank you. On January 14th is our next school board meeting, a budget work session, along with a regular school board meeting, right here at the Humiston. Starts at 5 o'clock.
So that one, we had proposed the budget schedule starting earlier, was receptive. Is that still okay?
Earlier
starts.
than 5?
Starting at 5,
Yeah.
that were
As opposed
versus
to
5:30.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then Tuesday, January 21st, we have another budget work session set up for 5:30 here. Everybody good with that?
We want to start that one at 5 too.
If you could, that would be helpful, you know.
Is everybody amenable to 5 o'clock?
I am.
Yeah.
All right, let's start it at 5.
That's wonderful, thank you. Budget takes a lot of time, so.
All righty, is there any other business to come before this August board today? Nancy?
I just want to make a comment while Amanda is still here. So Sandwich had Christmas in the Village this weekend, and the presence of the high school students was, so the Laker bots were selling burritos out of the Cush's house, and the French class and the Spanish class that are going to Morocco on spring break were there selling
Empanadas, I think.
crepes and empanadas, and it was very much appreciated, and they did a great job. So great.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
All right, with that, I'd entertain a motion to go back into non-public session.
So
Moved by Ed,
I'll second.
seconded by Siobhan.
And voting, Ed,
yes.
Sean?
Yep.
Mark?
Yes.
I say yes.
Yes.
Charlie? Nancy? Jim?
Yes.
Very good, we're back in the non-public. Just use up.
I'm gonna sign off this.
Mrs. Dolph, can you hear me? Okay, I can do it. I just wanted to stop the recording since you're going into non-public, and you just want to make sure, since this was an open meeting, that everyone has left. So it looks like everyone has, so we're good to go.